Good evening, and welcome to the latest happenings inside our federal machine.
I am back with another overflowing swamp. It's Wednesday, February 4th, 2026. It's Faith On with tonight's episode. The Supreme Court has denied the Republicans' pleas to take up the case on the state of California gerrymandering its congressional districts. Rather than providing decisions and dissents, the Supreme Court simply declined to take up the case, which allows for California to redistrict its congressional map before the midterms. And President Trump had a long call with President Xi of China today, where they spoke about trade and military affairs and the in-person meeting both presidents will be having in April. Lots of speaking events happened today. First, Vice President JD Vance gave a speech at the Critical Minerals Ministerial today. Also, Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Todd Lyons spoke at the southern border today, touting the incredible numbers we've experienced with illegal crossings and deportations. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem also gave a speech during the same event at the southern border in Arizona, also discussing impressive numbers, including the fourth consecutive month of a decline in border apprehensions with a number under 6,000, and Border Patrol releasing 0 illegal immigrants into the country. And Border Czar Tom Homan also gave a speech, well, more like a press conference in Minneapolis today to discuss the latest progress in Operation Metro Surge. We also have some additional emails discovered in the Epstein files, as well as unhinged Democrats freaking out in front of the cameras. And as always, there's a lot more to get into, so we'll dive right in. And if you enjoyed the video, please give the video a quick like at some point during the episode and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the daily updates. And if you leave a comment below, I might just read it on tomorrow's episode. And every article you'll see in this episode will be linked right below in the description. So we're going to start right here with Red Wave Press breaking. The Supreme Court just denied the California Republican Party's emergency bid backed by the Trump DOJ to block the state's new gerrymandered congressional map that will likely add 5 extra seats for Democrats in the 2026 midterms.
Well, Sandra, breaking just moments ago, the Supreme Court is denying the California Republican Party's bid to stop a new voter-approved gerrymandered congressional map in the state. Now, this ruling will allow a congressional map that's a whole lot more favorable to Democrats in this year's midterm elections. Now, the order keeps in place districts that are designed to flip up to 5 seats currently being held by Republicans to Democrats. More on that as we get it.
More as we get it. Okay, we'll just have to see. So they didn't hear the case. They didn't hear the arguments and then give their decision. They just simply declined to hear it in the first place. As far as I understand, a part of their reasoning as to why they didn't take it up was because they allowed Texas to redistrict their state. So I'm not sure if that's directly related or not, but we'll get into a little bit more info on this. From Kyle Cheney, just in, the Supreme Court of the United States declines to take up the challenge to Governor Newsom's redistricting effort in California. So here's a document, Order List 607 U.S., Wednesday, February 4th, 2026. Order in pending case Tangipa David et al. Versus Newsom, Governor of California et al. The application for writ of injunction pending appeal presented to Justice Kagan and by her referred to the court is denied. So they are not going to be hearing it, unfortunately. From Nick Soder, breaking, the U.S. Supreme Court just allowed California's new congressional map, heavily favoring Democrats, to take effect before the midterm elections in November. All Republican states must redraw their maps now. Democrats will likely gain at least 5 seats in California. We have no time to delay. Well, this would be a perfect opportunity for Republicans to start amping up their ground game, start going door to door, doing everything they can to canvass, try to drum up as many new voters as they can possibly do. Essentially just copy and paste as dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds of Scott Presslers. We need as many Scott Presslers as we can possibly get. And I think that would certainly go a very long way in trying to retain the House. Plus, it would help if they, I don't know, maybe nuke the filibuster, maybe pass the SAVE Act, among other things that they've been dragging their feet on, or may not get to at all. And look, if neither of those things end up happening this year, and if Democrats end up taking over the House and the Senate, I mean, who else are you going to blame? You're going to have to blame those that I suppose that most of us who had voted for, being Republicans, we're going to have to blame them. So I don't know, call their office, send them emails, do anything you can as an individual. I mean, every person matters. Don't just think you're just another drop in the bucket, because what is a bucket but a bunch of drops, or at least a bucket of water, bucket of liquid. All right, so rapid response 47. This is President Trump on his call with President Xi. Quote, "We have a very good relationship. These are the two most powerful countries in the world, and we have a very good relationship. We spoke for an hour. China's paying a lot of tariffs. In the past, they didn't."
Just got off the phone with President Xi, and he is amazed at how well the United States is doing. He said he's never seen anything like it.
You brought the conversation, Mr. President, so let me ask you, what did you talk about?
Yeah, there better be plenty more where that came from.
We talked
What's the most important topic? Is it chips? Is it the wars in Ukraine? What is
fair question?
The economy, the relationship that we have with China. I'm going to be going there in April. Then he's coming here toward the end of the year.
Coming to the White House?
He's coming to the White House, toward the end of the year. We have a very good relationship. And, it's important that I have a good relationship, and for him that he has a good relationship with me. We have to have these are the two most powerful countries in the world, and we have a very good relationship.
You talk about tariffs?
We spoke for an hour.
Does he ask you about the tariffs? Is he saying this is hurting us?
Well, they're paying a lot of tariffs, as you know. China's paying a lot of tariffs. In the past, they didn't. I'm the one that put tariffs on China. I put tariffs on a lot of tariffs, or just so you understand, making our country rich. Our country has taken in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, really trillions, because the threat of tariffs is getting all of these countries to lose to us.
It's not exactly like tariffs as they function in the 1800s. We live in a whole different age. Plus, corporate America, they understand that the middle class doesn't have money like we used to. Especially during the COVID era, a year or two after things started settling down. Over the last couple of years, I mean, I would even argue going probably back to 2021, and maybe even some would even argue going all the way back to 2008, that a lot of people in the middle class don't really have money. So they could try to jack up their prices all they want, blame tariffs. However, by and large, they haven't done that, because I think they understand that the middle class just doesn't have that kind of money. If your average company raised their prices by 15, 20, 25%, people are just going to simply just not buy whatever it is you're selling, or they'll just go to somebody else who hasn't risen their prices that much, which is the beauty of capitalism. Whoever offers the best quality price or the best quality product for the lowest price, they're the ones who get all the customers. All right, so I have this from Donald Trump, President Trump's Truth Social, as it pertains to China. So he says, "I have just completed an excellent telephone conversation with President Xi. It was a long and thorough call where many important subjects were discussed, including trade, military, the April trip I will be making to China, which I very much look forward to, Taiwan also, and the war between Russia and Ukraine, the current situation with Iran, the purchase of oil and gas by China from the United States, also the consideration by China of the purchase of additional agricultural products, including lifting the soybean count to 20 million tons for the current season. They have already committed to 25 million tons for next season. Airplane engine deliveries was also something they talked about, and numerous other subjects, all very positive. The relationship with China and my personal relationship with President Xi is an extremely good one, and we both realize how important it is to keep it that way. I believe there will be many positive results achieved over the next 3 years of my presidency having to do with President Xi and the People's Republic of China, President Donald J. Trump." So just to pose a quick question to Grok, when was the last time President Xi visited the White House? And according to Grok, it was on September 25th, 2015, during his official state visit hosted by President Barack Obama. There have been no visits since then, as subsequent meetings with Trump or Biden occurred elsewhere, such as Mar-a-Lago and summits or other locations. So he has visited the U.S. since. He visited Trump in Mar-a-Lago. And while I'm here, I actually forgot to bring this up a minute ago when we were still on the redistricting in California. So on February 4th, 2026, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a brief unsigned order denying an emergency request from California Republicans to block the state's new congressional redistricting map. The map approved by voters via Proposition 50 back in November is seen as favoring Democrats and could help them gain up to 5 additional U.S. House seats in the 2026 midterms. It was enacted as a response to Texas Republican-friendly redistricting. Republicans argued the map was an unconstitutional racial gerrymander, but a lower federal court rejected that claim. Of course they did, because they were probably, a leftist activist judge. What else is new? Finding partisan motives dominant, the Supreme Court allowed the new map to proceed without explanation or dissents. This decision mirrors the court's earlier stance allowing Texas's map despite similar challenges. The new California lines will apply for the 2026, 28, and 2030 elections. So It's not just for the midterms. It's going to be for the foreseeable future. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next subject. From the vice president, this is posted by Rapid Response about 10 hours ago. The VP to world leaders on the importance of a secure critical mineral supply chain. Quote, this is something where our alliances and our friendships can really help one another. We have the capacity to make ourselves more independent and more self-reliant.
Let me just say a few things about what we're doing and why this matters. So I remember after our very wildly successful military operation in Venezuela, the President of the United States was talking with me and Marco and some of the other senior members of the cabinet. And he was talking just about how important it was that we ensured that the global economy had access to oil and gas many years in the future. And that, of course, is one of the reasons why we're interested in Venezuela, is because it has such a critical importance in this all-important resource called oil. And as much as we talk about the modern economy, the digital economy, the high-tech economy, the president said something that was very, very important and I think should inform a lot of how we think about future growth, which is that as much as data centers and technology and all of these incredible things that we're all working on matter, fundamentally, you still have an economy that runs on real things. And there is no realer thing than oil. And I would add to that, there's no realer thing than critical minerals. And I think a lot of us have learned the hard way, in some ways, over the last year, how much our economies depend on these critical minerals. So every man
China.
and woman, I believe, in this room understands what we're confronting together today. And I say together, and that is very much something that is at the heart of Secretary Rubio's initiative, and as he said, at the heart of what we're trying to do all across the administration, is recognize that this is something where our alliances and our friendships can really help one another. We're all on the same team. We're all rowing in the same direction. I believe that in this room, we have close to 2/3 of the world's GDP represented, and so we have the capacity to make ourselves more independent, more self-reliant, and that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of countries that are jumping on board with the United States. We're forming a coalition to all work together with regard to mining and processing, distributing critical minerals, because if you don't have the critical minerals, you don't have the AI, the electric vehicles, the batteries, the technology across the board. So we definitely need to get off Chinese dependency, and that's what this will accomplish, because China, they refine over 85% of all critical minerals globally. So they have a virtual monopoly on critical minerals, and I think it's about damn time that we finally get this off the ground. It's unreal, man. Like, if China really wanted to, if they really wanted to slam all the doors shut overnight, they really could put the entire West at a severe disadvantage. Notably, during COVID, none of us even knew that 95% of our antibiotic medication is manufactured in China. And don't quote me on it, but I think, isn't it a majority of our pharmaceuticals overall manufactured in China? I'm not sure. Maybe that's just the antibiotics portion. But I mean, just even with the critical minerals argument alone, if China wanted to shut that door overnight, I mean, that would really cripple us in many ways. And we got another one from Vice President Vance. So I'll just play it out.
Today, the international market for
we're going to hear the quotes anyway in here.
Failing. It's failing to create domestic markets or dignified jobs for our labor forces, and it's failing to keep our nation safe. Supply chains remain brittle and exceptionally concentrated. Asset and commodity prices are persistently depressed, driven downward by forces beyond any individual country's control. Now, how many times cumulatively have one of us or many of us in this room heard some variation of the story that I'm about to tell? A lithium mine, a gallium recovery center, you name it, is announced, sometimes
child
with
labor,
years in planning and financing nearly in place. Then overnight, foreign supply floods the market, the prices collapse, and investors pull out. The project stalls, and eventually the project dies on the vine. We've all seen, and then somebody buys it up for pennies on the dollar. Our countries.
Probably China.
The result is a global market where consistent investment is nearly impossible.
I mean, how else are they refining 85% of all the critical minerals?
Prices are erratic and unpredictable. And that's one of the things that we want to work on with this initiative. Let's make the prices more predictable and less erratic so that we can support the domestic supply chains and the investment that makes those supply chains possible.
Yeah, that way A country like Australia, they might be able to mine cobalt, for instance, and I don't know, like the UK might be able to mine a lot of, I'm just throwing like nickel or like tin or whatever. Like different Western countries can mine different critical minerals, and we can all just share it all together, I guess. I mean, I think that's part of what they're getting at, is so that we can have just a collective initiative to make sure that the prices don't get out of control and, things don't swing so wildly. Okay, so we got one more from Vice President Vance.
Every single one of us represented in this room has become dependent on arrangements we did not choose, and right now, arrangements that we cannot control. We all face the same vulnerability: access to the things that protect our people and sustain our way of life. Everything from missile defense systems to energy,
this is why globalism fails,
to advanced manufacturing, to emerging technologies. The fundamental supply chains that support these industries sometimes can vanish in the blink of an eye without any control or influence from many of the countries in this room. And we in the Trump administration believe it is the business of the government, of the people's government elected just over a year ago, to confront such problems, and that we want to confront them together.
I mean, all it takes is just one country to say, look, I don't want to play your game anymore. We're gonna isolate ourselves, and all of our valuable commodities that the rest of the world desperately need from us. Yeah, sorry, you ain't gonna get it anymore because we're just gonna be independent now. And that's where I think globalism fundamentally falls apart. And that's just one of many reasons why globalism is an absolute failure. There's no way that it's ever going to succeed in any meaningful way. Maybe the first couple of years it might look nice and wonderful, just like, I don't know, maybe certain elements of socialism might look great for like the first year or so. Or even like going back to COVID, using that argument once more, when they're cutting $1,200 checks and $600 checks, and you're getting these big checks in the mail for money that you didn't labor over. Yeah, sure, it's great in the short term. You can buy you some nice things, maybe pay off a couple of bills here and there. But then down the road, about a year or so, inflation starts to run wildly out of control. Okay, so we got one more from Vice President Vance to keep the train rolling.
To form a trading bloc among allies and partners, one that guarantees American access to American industrial might, while also expanding production across the entire zone. The benefits will be immediate and durable. Regardless of how much material flows into the global market, prices within the preferential trade zone will remain consistent. Over time, our goal within that zone is to create diverse centers of production, stable investment conditions, and supply chains that are immune to the kind of external disruptions that we've already talked about. For those of you who join, we offer you a necessary foundation for private financing and secure access to the critical mineral supplies your nation would require in an emergency or some other contingency. By regulating imports to preserve free and fair competition within the preferential trading zone, we will elevate our nation's miners and refiners, our investors and our producers alike. We are all on the same team, and we need to create the economic incentives that reward people for investing and building in our countries. Membership will be vital for developing economies seeking to expand mining capacity. And it'll be just as important for the advanced economies that rely on these materials to sustain their advanced industries, to sustain their growth and security.
Yeah, it sure will. I don't see why they wouldn't sign up with it. I'm sure that everyone that he's speaking to, I'm sure they're going to get on board with this. Okay, so from the Department of State, watch the Critical Minerals Ministerial live from the State Department. I believe this is the speech of Vice President Vance in its entirety. So it goes on for about an hour. I will repost this. There's a direct link to my profile down below in the description. It'll take you straight there. Or you can go to @State Department. You can just go to x.com. Don't have to sign in. You can go to this little search magnifying glass. It's got the same thing if you're using a phone. You can even open up your browser. You can go to Chrome or use whatever web browser you use and just type in x.com and it'll take you straight there. And you just plug in @State Department, which they posted this at 9:04 a.m. this morning, February 4th. Man, they got started earlier today. All right, so from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, Americans want voter integrity. Why don't Democrats? And this, interestingly, is on USA Today. Americans want voter integrity. Why don't the Democrats? And let's see. So from Nicole Russell, which is an opinion piece, what's the point in having power in Congress if Republicans don't use it to pass legislation that the American people overwhelmingly support? Yeah, that's a fair question, isn't it? I am loath to give credit to my friends in the Democrat Party for much, but I will say this about them. They know how and when to circle the wagons to get things done in Congress. I hate this when it's done in practice, like when Senate Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act in 2009 with just 60 votes and no Republican support. Senate Republicans were able to narrowly pass the One Big Beautiful Bill Act in 2025, with Vice President JD Vance casting a tie-breaking vote. Republicans in Congress must learn from that success and also rip a page from the Democrats' playbook and forge ahead with chutzpah to get one more bill passed, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, or the SAVE Act, which would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. It passed the U.S. House with some bipartisan support and should be brought to the Senate floor. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, said on February 3rd that he was open to pushing Democrats to oppose the bill toward the standing filibuster, a seldom used interpretation of the rules to require that senators actively hold the floor with continuous debate or delay or block a vote. As of this writing, Thune hasn't yet decided if he will do that. Probably won't. Republicans need 60 votes, which they might not have to invoke cloture and end debate. Republicans should allow Democrats to exhaust themselves with the filibuster, and when it ends, whip up enough votes to pass the SAVE Act. Yeah, I mean, if that'll work, whatever they can do to get it to pass. It looks like Senate Republicans and Democrats are stonewalling a bill the majority of Americans support for different reasons. Republicans support the bill, but are balking because they are short of the votes. Thankfully, Senator Mike Lee, Republican of Utah, co-sponsored the bill and seems to think Republicans are close to forcing Democrats to filibuster 24/7 on the Senate floor. Rep. Brandon Gill, Republican of Texas, wrote a strong letter to Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, asking his committee to stop stalling and push the SAVE Act to the Senate floor. I think this advice is wise, in part because Americans already support key elements of the bill, and in part because it forces Democrats to explain why they wouldn't support something most Americans already do. Well, one thing that they like to throw around is that, well, minorities, they just don't have driver's licenses. And matter of fact, I already looked that up earlier today. 92% of Americans have a driver's license. And the remaining 8%, I'm sure they got birth certificates. Either way, they can show proof of their citizenship in one way or another, and they can get their voter ID accordingly. According to the Pew Research Center's 2025 survey, an incredible 83% of Americans favor requiring all voters to show a government-issued photo ID. A 2024 Gallup poll showed that 83% supported requiring people who are registering to vote for the first time to provide proof of citizenship. If Republicans won't bring the SAVE Act to the Senate floor, they should reconsider why they are lawmakers in the first place, and their constituents should not hesitate to vote them out of office during their next election. What's the point in having power in Congress if Republicans don't use it to pass legislation that the American people overwhelmingly support? They need more strategy and grit. Why don't Democrats want tighter election security? Well, Americans must present a valid photo ID to travel on an airplane or even purchase alcohol. This should be a base requirement for election security. In fact, I can't understand why Democrats wouldn't support this, especially given its popularity among the electorate. Yet Senate Democrats have vocally opposed the SAVE Act despite the fact that Americans support key elements of the bill. Well, it's quite simple. It's because Republicans support it. That's why they don't support it. And plus, they want illegals to vote, obviously. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, hates the SAVE Act so much that he called it Jim Crow 2.0. I remember when he said that. It was just the other day. The Brennan Center for Justice has said that the bill would undermine Americans' freedom to vote, noting roughly half of Americans don't even have a passport. So what? You don't need a passport to prove your citizenship. Millions lack access to a paper copy of their birth certificate. Critics of the bill say it would curb access to voting for millions of Americans who lack proper identification. Nope, wrong. But I don't see how the requirements in the SAVE Act are in any way unreasonable. Well, they're not. No, they're not. All you need is your birth certificate, your driver's license, just some government-issued form of ID to prove your citizenship, and then you can get your voter ID. I mean, it's quite simple. It's not that difficult. I do want every American, I do want every American citizen to be able to vote, but proof of citizenship should be a bare minimum requirement. The fact that Democrats are adamantly against this and Republicans are raising red flags about why. Are Democrats afraid they would lose potential voters? Republicans must pass the SAVE Act to strengthen the law that permits only U.S. citizens to vote in federal elections. Requiring voter ID and proof of citizenship ensures that our federal elections are decided by U.S. citizens. Republicans should tear a page from the Democrats' playbook, circle the wagons, and do what Democrats would do if they were in power. Bring the bill to the floor and let the other side filibuster it to exhaustion and force them to explain why they are against something most Americans support. If Republicans can't do this, then they shouldn't be in power. Yeah, I know. Isn't that sad? It's sad. It's pathetic, somewhat scary. And I don't know, man, it definitely leaves doubts that they're going to hang on to the Congress, really, the House or the Senate. Okay, we'll move on to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement from 7 hours ago. Under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Noem, criminal illegal aliens are being deported at record numbers thanks to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The southern border has never been more secure thanks to Customs and Border Protection. American cities and neighborhoods are being made safe again. We will continue to defend the homeland.
You know, I've done my whole adult life pretty much in
that
law
is very
enforcement,
quiet.
and
Here we go.
more than 20 years doing immigration enforcement. I've never seen the teamwork that we have right now, and I've never had the leadership like President Trump and Secretary Noem. Border Patrol sees it, ICE sees it, OFO and AMO. We never had a secretary that was out there on the front lines with us every day, willing to put herself out there to be seen, to actually know what we do every day. And that's what the amazing thing is. The partnership with the Border Patrol has been amazing. The fact that you all have secured the border so quickly lets us do our job in the interior. And I got to tell you that the men and women of ICE, ERO, Homeland Security Investigations, we value the partnership of having Border Patrol and OFO side by side with us out in the communities now, arresting those bad guys that are finally out there. Chief Paul said it best. We didn't need any new laws. We just had to have the opportunity to enforce the laws we've trained for our whole lives. And that's what we're doing right now. I always say that it was always hard to do law enforcement by executive order. We're not doing that anymore. The executive order we have now from the president and the secretary is go do your job. And that's what we're doing. And this last year has been remarkable results. But we still have about 1.5 million individuals in this country that have a final order of deportation. And more than 800 of those are serious criminal actors.
We said 1.5 million, 800,000 that are serious.
Men and women of CBP and
offenders.
ICE are out there every day doing it. And one thing is for sure, not only do the American people appreciate what we're doing, but all these moms and dads and angel families all around the United States that under the last administration had to suffer horrendous losses because of poor policies. But now with Secretary Noem,
really still are, to be
Trump at
honest.
the helm, it's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, there's still crimes being committed by illegals. It didn't stop as soon as Trump got in. They're still doing bad things out there. And the White House, about a week or so ago, they brought up an angel mom who spoke from the podium during the press conference at the White House, and I thought that was a fantastic idea. I think any angel mom who wants to go up and speak before the American people and from the White House podium, I think they should give them the floor. And I'm kind of disappointed they only did that for one day. I was hoping they were going to continue that, at least give them a few minutes to say their piece and to explain why it's vitally important that we get our freaking country, our border, our immigration under the freaking control. And we got this from Secretary Kristi Noem. In President Trump's first year back in office, we have delivered the most secure border in American history. And we did so in the immediate aftermath of the worst border crisis in history. President Trump's leadership and bold action have given this country a secure border that keeps breaking historical records. January 2026 marked the fourth consecutive month of decline in the number of Border Patrol apprehensions at the southwest border, with just over 6,000. And the 9th month in a row that Border Patrol has released 0 illegal aliens into the interior of the country.
Because of President Trump's leadership and his bold action, this country keeps breaking historic records. In fact, we have the lowest crime rate in this nation right now because of President Trump and his strength.
Well, lowest murder rate, at
securing our
least.
border that we've ever had in the history of this nation since we've been tracking crimes. The lowest murder rate that we've ever recorded.
Okay, well, I guess it could be crime overall.
And that's because we enforce
the only one I heard was murder, but
and we hold criminals accountable for what they do to perpetuate violence against the American people. In fact, for the last 9 months, the Border Patrol has released 0 illegal aliens into the interior of the country. It's incredible, the work that they do every day. And that's what happens when you fight for law and order. Overall, Customs and Border Protection has recorded the lowest number of encounters in the agency's history in 2025. Daily encounters have fallen by 95% over the last year. While the daily average of apprehensions in the Biden years was over 5,100 per day, in the last year it was less than 250. In addition to keeping the illegal aliens out, we're also protecting the American people from the deadly drugs that are coming in. And just in 2025, CBP seized over 600,000 pounds of illicit drugs. The death rate and the fentanyl deaths in this country have dropped in 1 year under President Trump. Because he secured the border, fentanyl deaths have gone down 30%. We can't wait to continue to keep working to save more American lives.
Yeah, it's an incredible number,
man. We have to continue to keep ramping up our efforts
tens of
and do all
thousands
that
of
we
people
can to protect our children. And we're thankful for President Trump's vision to invest in technology, invest in people, and invest in the resources that we need to do our jobs.
There you go. Secretary Kristi Noem speaking from the border in Arizona. They clamped down on the border. No illegals getting through. That's taking care of business and protecting our country. Okay. And from Homeland Security, got another one live now. Secretary Noem hosts a press conference on border security from Nogales. Is that Nogales, Arizona? I don't know. I've never been to Arizona, so I don't know how to pronounce all the names of the cities, towns, areas of Arizona. So I'll repost it because we already heard from Secretary Kristi Noem. I'm sure that was the most important part of the speech because that's what she decided to share. So I will leave that linked in my profile if you want to check that out, or you can go to DHS.gov and it'll be right there. And the timestamp 11:54 a.m. today, February 4th. And we'll move into Tom Homan, who spoke in Minneapolis today. The president and I would like to thank the men and women of ICE, Border Patrol, and other federal agencies on the ground here for your dedication to the oath you swore. I know the tragedies you've seen. The president is with you.
President Trump and I would like to thank the men and women of ICE, Border Patrol, and other federal agencies on the ground here for your dedication to the oath you swore to enforce the federal laws and promote public safety through the work you do. That hasn't been easy. I know the sacrifices you made. I know the sacrifices your families make. I know your families worry about you every day. I know you've been away from birthdays and anniversaries and holidays. I appreciate every one of you. I wore that green uniform. I love the United States Border Patrol. I was an ICE agent. I know the job you have. I know the tragedies you've seen. The president is with you.
Well, yeah, it can't be easy these days when they've got an 8,000% increase in attacks and assaults and threats and everything else going on. So we have another one for Tom Homan. I've actually got quite a few. They're not very long. They're about a minute and a half or less, I believe.
We currently have an unprecedented number of counties communicating with us now and allowing ICE to take custody of illegal aliens before they hit the streets. Unprecedented cooperation.
Finally.
And I'll say it again. This is efficient, requires only
of course, the
one
Democrats
or
are
two
very quiet
officers
about
to
that.
assume custody
Governor
of
Tim
criminal
Walz
alien
very
target,
quiet about that.
rather than 8 or 10 officers going into the community
Hey, man, at least it's happening.
and arresting that public safety threat. This frees up more officers to arrest or remove criminal aliens. More officers taking custody of criminal aliens directly from the jails means less officers on the street doing criminal operations. This is smart law enforcement, not less law enforcement. It's safer for the community, safer for the officers, and safer for the alien. This coordination also makes it far more safe for the Twin Cities. Arresting a public safety threat in the safety and security of a jail is the safest thing we could do. Further, less public safety risks are being released back into the communities, reduces recidivism. So local law enforcement can direct their limited resources to other public safety matters in their community. This is another priority of President Trump.
Yeah, because Lord knows there's plenty of public security issues happening in Minneapolis, thanks to their, psychotic residents, or at least a few of them, relatively few, I would imagine. Okay, so let's move on to the next one.
We currently have an unprecedented number of counties communicating with us now and allowing ICE to take custody of illegal aliens before they hit the streets. Unprecedented cooperation. And I'll say it again. This is efficient, requires only 1 or 2 officers to assume custody of a criminal alien target.
Yeah, not a whole freaking
8
team.
or 10 officers going into the community and arresting that public safety
Yep,
threat.
using their vehicles, wasting gas.
This frees up more officers to arrest or remove criminal aliens. More officers taking custody of criminal aliens directly from the jails means less officers on the street doing criminal operations. This is smart law enforcement, not less law enforcement.
It's not even smart. It's just common
It's safer
sense,
for the community,
which
safer
Democrats
for the
obviously
officers,
have lost all of theirs.
and safer for the alien. This coordination also makes it far more safe for the Twin Cities. Arresting a public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail is the safest thing we could do. Further, less public safety risks are being released back into the communities, reduces recidivism. So local law enforcement can direct.
Okay, well, I don't know why that they included that twice. I mean, it's from Rapid Response. So, I mean, look, whatever. I guess we'll just roll on to the next one. So, deployed a multi-agency surge task force with the operational framework that clarifies lines of effort, integrated enforcement, investigative, and special response efforts. Okay, so this one at least doesn't sound like a repeat. So
During my press
we'll
conference
try
last
this one.
week, I announced that moving forward, ICE will be conducting targeted immigration enforcement operations, like ICE has traditionally done for decades, based on reasonable suspicion to question and detain. ICE will conduct these operations and transnational criminal organization investigations with a focus on national security and public safety. I want to be clear. Just because you prioritize public safety threats don't mean we forget about everybody else. We will continue to enforce the immigration laws in this country. To help execute this, we have developed and implemented a multi-agency surge task force with an operational framework that clarifies lines of effort, integrated enforcement, investigative and special response efforts. A unified joint operations center has been established to manage all operations and ensure efforts align with priorities of the mission. This reorganization also enables ICE to leverage joint intelligence capabilities to effectively target threats, as well as to reduce the overall personnel footprint and enhance public safety and confidence in the agency's capabilities and presence here. I have also ensured that officials from legal internal affairs offices remain on the ground as long as this operation continues.
Yeah, and I'd like to know how much longer it's going to take. It sounds like it's going to have to take a long time, but it'll take a lot less time if they continue being able to pick them up from the jails.
For those who are not a national security threat or public safety risk, you are not exempt from immigration enforcement actions.
No, you are
not. If you're in the
not.
country illegally, you are not off the table.
Your days are numbered.
And let me be clear, President Trump fully intends to achieve mass deportations during this administration, and immigration enforcement actions will continue every day throughout this country. President Trump made a promise, and we have not directed otherwise. I heard rumors we have, untrue. Given that many public safety threats on our communities, many of which poured across the border during the Biden administration, it makes sense to prioritize public safety risk right now. Again, prioritization doesn't mean you forget about everybody else.
Well, it certainly does. I'm sure there is some correlation between the crime rates and the sanctuary city status. I would imagine that sanctuary cities, at least over the last year or two, maybe over the last several years, they probably have some of the highest crime rates in the country. All right, so we have another one. Watch Real Tom Homan lists some of the stats displaying how immigration enforcement efforts have made Minneapolis safer. We take a lot of bad people off the street. Everyone should be grateful for that.
The federal law enforcement personnel, ICE and CBP, and other partner agencies are patriots. And they've carried out their duties patriotically, with integrity, with professionalism, and compassion. I've said this many times, these men and women don't hang their heart on the hook when they come to work. President Trump and I strongly stand with them in the critical work they do to prevent harmful or otherwise dangerous people from entering or remaining in this country. As part of the surge operation here, numerous criminal aliens have already been arrested. We've arrested 14 people who had homicide convictions, 139 people with sex-related offenses. 28 gang members. Correct me, 139 assault convictions, 87 sex offenses, 28 gang members have been arrested, just to name a few. We're taking a lot of bad people off the street. Everybody should be grateful to that. Who in their right mind would want these dangerous criminals walking around their communities? Everyone has a constitutional right to peacefully protest. President Trump and I, we completely support that. At the same time, professional law enforcement officers should and need to be able to perform their sworn duties without being harassed, impeded, or assaulted. I want anyone to report instances of alleged misconduct or wrongdoing. There's a way to report that. The Trump administration is taking violations of 18 U.S.C. 111, which is assaulting, impeding, interfering. We're taking that seriously. If you violate the law, you will be federally prosecuted. In the past month, 158 people have been arrested for violation of 111. 85 cases have been already accepted for prosecutions. The rest remain pending. We've had 9 indictments of those who raided the church, and additional cases are being worked. Additionally, I've been saying this for almost a year now. Hateful, extreme rhetoric against ICE personnel is completely unacceptable. Please stop. I said back in March of this year, if the hateful rhetoric didn't stop, I was afraid there would be bloodshed.
Well, they're not going to stop. They're paying too much money, these activists.
President Trump and
a lot of people aren't working.
Secretary,
so they're just getting money to go out and protest.
See any bloodshed. It is no doubt encouraging and inciting certain people to violate the law, wanting to harm and actually harm law enforcement, their families, is unacceptable.
Yeah, they just don't care. They just want to burn everything down. That's all they care about. Just burn it all down. All right, so we've got from CBP, watch Tom Hillman live. This is going to be his entire press conference, and it's going to be right here on YouTube. So obviously I'm not going to play it. It is about 30 minutes in length, so I'll make sure that I have that link below if you want to watch the entirety of it, even though we pretty much got all the meat and potatoes out of it. But regardless, it'll be down there if you want to check it out. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement 8 hours ago, stalking our ICE officers in your personal vehicle like this video shows below isn't journalism, it's activism. Our officers are out in the streets of Minneapolis conducting targeted enforcement operations on high-priority criminal illegal aliens with horrid track records, R-worders, murderers, drug traffickers, gang members, and more. Do not impede or obstruct ongoing operations. Well, that's what I was just about to say. It's not only... not only is it not journalism, not only is it activism, it's arguably obstruction and also probably a form of stalking too. All right, so from Ford Fisher, ICE agents laugh and smile in their vehicles as they used mild evasive maneuver to lose press and watchers by repeatedly signaling one direction and going another here in Minneapolis. So they're just trolling the leftists. I think that's hilarious. This occurred after 2 parked agents' vehicles were spotted and split up. Oh, so now they're splitting up now, so they got to follow one or the other. That's kind of clever. You know, beat them at their own game.
Want me to turn into this parking lot?
Yes.
Nope.
A second joke of it.
So what it sounds like they're on the phone with a bunch of activist leaders, informing them, like, okay, so as soon as they turn in and they start suiting up for another raid, that's when they're going to call in the leftist cavalry, and that's when everybody just like screeches their tires to a stop. They start throwing the signs out to everybody, and everybody just starts screaming, blowing their R whistles, the whole 9 yards.
I wonder if they know.
I'm filming.
They're smiling and laughing.
Yeah, they're laughing.
Yeah, man, they're beating you at your own game. I think that's hilarious. They should keep that up. You know, might as well have some fun while they're out there. All right, RNC Research journalist David Hawk exposes how Tim Walz repeatedly refused to act on the rampant fraud in Minnesota, and they provide a quote, so we'll just hear him say it.
Going back to whether Governor Walz knew about it, Governor Walz admitted knowing about the fraud early in his first term, which would say 2020. Well, Minnesota statute 3.971 subdivision 9 clearly says that if you are made aware of fraud in a state agency, you are obligated to immediately report that fraud to the Office of the Legislative Auditor. Immediately.
Uh-oh.
The Legislative Auditor is then the body that determines which law enforcement agency to bring into the investigation. Governor Walz did not contact the Office of the Legislative Auditor. He said he contacted the FBI. About what? That's not what the law says.
Uh-oh. Well, he's got some explaining to do. Of course, he's not going to be able to explain any of it. He's just going to give his classic deer in the headlights look like, oh, what? What? I don't know. Okay, so we got this from Homeland Security. Lowest migrant encounters in over half a century. Under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Noem, the southern border is more secure than ever. This historically low migrant encounter rate reflects the tireless work of the brave men and women of CBP. Those who would illegally immigrate to the United States know that the Biden open border era is over. The natural generosity of Americans can no longer be taken advantage of. Well, at least not until Democrats get back into power. In 2025, encounters with migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border fell to their lowest level since 1970. Migrant encounters by U.S. Border Patrol at the U.S.-Mexico border by fiscal year. Of course, under Biden, it skyrockets like freaking skyscrapers. And then, of course, in 2025, it drops to an incredibly low number. So, yeah, man, it was ramping up in the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s, and then it started trailing off, and then it exploded again, of course, under Biden. Rolled on to Homeland Security. The New York Times should be embarrassed with this attempt to smear DHS law enforcement. ICE does not conduct enforcement at hospitals, period. So pregnant women in Minneapolis are hiding from ICE, facing impossible choice. Healthcare providers across Minnesota have reported federal immigration agents present and around medical centers. As arrests continue across the state, expecting mothers are afraid to go to their appointments and reconsidering their birth plans. I mean, how many did they speak with? Did they speak to dozens, hundreds? Did they speak to any? Or are they just making this up out of thin air? So anyway, no, Homeland Security goes on to say that we would only go into a hospital if there were an active danger to public safety. If anyone is impeding Minnesotans from making appointments or picking up prescriptions, it's violent agitators who are blocking roadways. Furthermore, pregnancy in ICE detention is exceedingly rare, making up 0.133% of all illegal aliens in custody. Pregnant women receive regular prenatal visits, mental health services, nutritional support, and accommodations aligned with community standards of care. This is the best health care many of these individuals have received in their entire lives. There you go. And where did they say that was from again? Oh, yeah, the New York Times. Well, of course it's from the New York Times. That's not a shocker. All right, criminal illegal aliens have no place in our communities, especially on our police forces. Larry Tima, a 46-year-old illegal alien from Cameroon, was recruited to the New Orleans Police Department and even issued a gun, despite the fact that he could not legally carry a weapon as an illegal alien. Tima entered the United States legally in 2015 on a visitor visa. In 2016, he was granted conditional residency after marrying a U.S. citizen. In 2022, his application for permanent residency was denied due to fraud. Under President Trump and Secretary Noem, ICE is restoring law and order. Criminal illegal aliens have no place in our communities, especially on our police forces. Dude is even in uniform. He's in full police uniform as a New Orleans police officer with a weapon and all. And he's not the first one. He's not the first officer, illegal immigrant that they have arrested. I think the other one was in Minneapolis, some guy from Eastern Europe that they ended up apprehending. And he was in full uniform. He had a service weapon with him and all that too. Absolutely crazy. That happened earlier this year, at least a few months ago. Right. Another one from ICE. 152 criminal illegal aliens nabbed in a 3-day Florida ICE operation. We deported 23 on day 2 alone, working with our 287G partners like Florida Highway Patrol and state and local law enforcement, as well as Border Patrol and other federal enforcement partners to get criminals like these out of neighborhoods. So let's have a look and see what they got. Aggravated assault with a weapon. Henry Zamora, a criminal alien from Honduras, served 8 years in prison as a 1999 final removal order and was previously removed from the U.S. twice. So that dude's on his way out, hopefully for the last time. And this guy, Sebastian Ortiz Jimenez, a criminal, illegal alien from Guatemala, 2021 final removal order, previously deported, DUI pending charge, cruelty toward a child, resisting an officer, and multiple traffic offenses, and domestic violence ×2 pending. Dennis Nunez, a criminal illegal from Honduras, was charged with 2 counts of domestic violence, 2024 final order of removal. I mean, I definitely like this because this is in my state. And felony fraud, felony illegal re-entry. Miguel Austria, a criminal illegal alien from Mexico, was previously deported in 2008 and in 2010. And okay, so that's what they've shared. And obviously, those aren't the only three. They said that they, what was the number? It was in the hundreds. 152 criminal illegals that they have nabbed in the state of Florida. Homeland Security fact check. Meher Maud Tarabishi is a criminal alien and self-admitted member of the Palestine Liberation Organization. He was arrested by ICE officers October 28th in Dallas, Texas. Shockingly, Tarabishi has been permitted to remain in the U.S. illegally for nearly 2 decades, despite being ordered removed from the U.S. by both an immigration judge and the Board of Immigration Appeals. The Obama administration went as far as to proactively file a joint motion to dismiss the immigration case against Tarabishi on August 10th of 2011, despite the fact that he had admitted to being a member of a foreign terrorist organization and was already ordered removed. So that's the individual there. A Texas family, this is on ABC News, a Texas family grieved as they laid 30-year-old Wael Tarabishi to rest. His father, Meher Tarabishi, however, was not at the funeral. Instead, he was at an Immigration and Customs Enforcement detention center nearly 3 hours away in Anson, Texas. And I will provide the link for you if you want to read into that, if you want to get their take on the situation, even though Homeland Security has fact-checked that. And from Doge designer, Reid Hoffman visited Epstein's island multiple times, yet legacy media stays dead silent. Why? Because he's a top Democrat donor, and media is just the Democratic Party's propaganda wing. Elon Musk never visited the island, and yet they unleash nonstop smears against him. And they have this image from Jeffrey J.E.E. Vacation, that's Jeffrey Epstein's email, to Reid Hoffman. Okay, come to Island Ranch, let's play. And previous to that, from Reid Hoffman, probably not, China visits, etc., possibly next year. And looks like the original message was from Jeffrey Epstein. One of my friends, Reid Hoffman, has spent almost 100 on Dems, let's say, cuts off our friendship. So communication going between Reid Hoffman and Jeffrey Epstein. Well, Reid Hoffman, he responds to this yesterday, says, I only knew Jeffrey Epstein because of a fundraising relationship with MIT, which I very much regret. In 2019, I told Axios the last meeting I had with him was in 2015, but I was mistaken, as according to calendar entries. I have become aware there were additional fundraising meetings in 2016 and 2018. These meetings were all coordinated by Joy Ito, then director of the MIT Media Lab. April 8th, 2016, meeting in Palo Alto, and then there's other dates that he includes in 2016, and then one in March 2018 with a Skype call. I've done multiple calendar searches, and if I find any other meetings, I will continue to share them. The victims of Epstein's abhorrent and vile actions deserve all the information they are seeking, and I continue to call on President Trump to deliver that for them. Okay, well, there you go. That was his response. Oh yeah, by the way, it got ruthlessly ratioed. 4,800 comments to 2,000 likes. I didn't even think to look in any of the comments. Probably can't look too deep because it probably gets kind of rough down here. I've done multiple calendar searches. I've investigated myself, and I have found myself innocent. Yeah, that's a fair point. You know, he determines himself to be innocent. I didn't do anything wrong because I verified my actions. You were on his island in 2014. He was released from prison in 2009. You and everyone else were well aware of the volume and nature of the credible and horrific accusations leading up to the corrupted process of justice. Your convenient lapse of memory of multiple further interactions in the period in which you said there were none shines serious doubt on the integrity of your public comments overall regarding your fundraising relationship. That's the same silly, half-baked nonsense Bill Gates has been saying. Anyway, it goes on. He goes on quite a ways. Reid Hoffman, 2,642 results in the Epstein files. That is a lot of results, more than double the results of Trump, I believe, or at least almost double. In one 2015 exchange, Hoffman sent Epstein an email containing a link writing my occasional roundup of interesting links and writing I've shared in case you missed them. Epstein responded, but on another topic, hey, it looks like your diet program has worked. Slow process, Hoffman replied, indicating he would see Epstein soon, planning to see you in August. Hope you're well. Well, so he was planning on seeing him in August that year. The records of Epstein's schedules were included in discovery exchanges and litigation since settled between the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands and J.P. Morgan Chase. The records were obtained by ABC News through a public records request. Let's let's see, in November 2014, calendar entry lists a reminder that Hoffman would be arriving in Fort Lauderdale via Virgin America flight. The schedule then lists 9 p.m. Boeing flight that would arrive LSJ, in apparent reference to Epstein's Island. According to the Wall Street Journal, Hoffman told the outlet he visited Epstein's Island only once for an MIT fundraising trip. He also said his last interaction with Epstein occurred in 2015 and that he regretted his association with him. Well, now we know, according to Ed Hoffman himself, it was in 2018, but could be even more recent than that. Beyond the island visit, Epstein's calendar records also reflect multiple Skype calls scheduled with Hoffman, including 2013 and into 2014. All right, anyway, so that was just some info from somebody who commented on that. And we got this from the Epstein Files. This is disgusting. Epstein's ex, Eva Dubin, 2010. And she says, well, here, I'll just read it. Hold on a second. So Eva Dubin is Epstein's girlfriend from 1981 to 1990. Now married to a hedge fund billionaire, emailed him with a casual invite. Very interesting. Selena will have 5 friends over. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So this is from Jeffrey Epstein himself, and he says, I'm at the ranch, and that was August of 2010. And then Eva Dubin replied to that on August 14th, same day, looks like later that afternoon, saying, come and visit next week. Selena will have 5 friends over. Okay. Of course, we don't know exactly what that is, but our imaginations can only imagine what that was probably pertaining to. Okay, and what else do we have? From Mario Nalfall, this is sick and needs to be unredacted. I believe I already shared this. Oh, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. I did not share this yesterday. Mario Nalfall, he shared another despicable email that was discovered in the Epstein files, and they had redacted who it's from, who is clearly not a victim. From blank, probably not a victim, because they say new Brazilian just arrived. Sexy and cute equals 9 years old. What the hell? And it was being sent to Jeffrey Epstein, and that was on January 17th of 2013. Yeah, why is the DOJ not going to redact this? This is insanity. And of course, they blacked out the name. This is no victim. Absolutely not a victim. So they're required by federal law to give us this name. I don't care who it is, what elitist it is. I don't care if it's like Bill Gates himself or whoever the hell it might be, Bill Clinton. I don't care who. Whoever it is, we need to know. Actually, not only do we need to know, they're required by law to tell us who that is. And what else do we have? Why are the names like this being redacted, and why is everyone okay with this? See, there's another one. This is the one that I shared yesterday. Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty. Sent from my iPhone. Redacted the name, who is obviously not a victim. It needs to be shared. But do you think we're ever going to get it? I have a feeling we're not going to. And from 50 Shades of Way, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Why the fuck are emails like this redacted? And we got another one from sent to Jeffrey Epstein from, of course, we don't know the name, and March 19th of 2018. I found at least 3 very good young poor, but we was so tired. I will cover up this week. Meet this one, not the beauty queen, but we both likes her a lot. Yeah, why are they blacking out those names? It is insane. Globe Eye News. Stephen Hawking is mentioned at least 232 times in the Epstein files, which I think is kind of hilarious. But anyway, I guess I can try to verify that myself by just going there and typing in his name. All right, and drum roll. Let's see, 232. They were correct as of right now. That would be February the 4th. And they've got all the documents, the PDFs, the data set, all the references. So anyway, yeah, Stephen Hawking, 232 results. Not sure why he'd be named so many times in the Epstein files. I think that's kind of weird, but he's mentioned in them. Rapid Response 47, low IQ. Rep. Maxine Waters tells the U.S. Treasury Secretary to shut up. Secretary Scott Bessent, can you maintain some level of dignity?
10 and 20 million immigrants.
Can you
look
shut
at the
up?
housing stock of working Americans, and can you maintain some level of dignity?
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Yikes. She wanted to throw just one last, will you shut up? Well, dude, if you don't like what he has to say, then don't ask the question. Okay, so Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez Intimidation is an age-old tactic to qualm public dissent and outrage. This administration is going after public figures to encourage the American people to self-censor, but we will not be silenced, and we will not accept this violation of our First Amendment rights. Of course, she's, in my opinion, providing plenty of cover for Don Lemon because he was released from jail without bail. They let him out for nothing, absolutely nothing. Federal government was asking for a $100,000 bond. The judge said, nah, you can go for free. Because, you know, you're Don Lemon after all. It's rules for thee, not for me. And not only that, but the judge also approved his request to go on this lavish luxury vacation in the south of France coming this June. He is leaving the country with the judge's blessing. How do you like that? So let's hear what they have to say.
They know that they can't go after all of us. They know that they can't go after everyone with a cell phone. They know that they can't go after every single journalist.
Well, they can if you break the law. Dumbass.
Cover these stories. And so what they want to do is that they want to make an example out of one person that's highly visible or has a position of leadership like you or like Georgia Ford.
This is obviously what Democrats know very well.
Who are trying to do similar things to self-censor, to self-silence, to be afraid that, well, if it happened to him, then it could happen.
Look, remind me, who was it? Was it the Republicans or the Democrats that coined the term hate speech, and they try to make everything a hate speech issue? I don't think that happened on the Republican or conservative side, AOC.
So I'm not going to do it because they know that we outnumber them.
If you don't like what we have to say, they just call hate speech. And they silence you, shadow ban you.
I just want to say how important it is, the example that you're setting by not backing down.
No, it's what they want us to say. It's what they want to be able to hold all of the keys to our speech. That's the problem. That's what they really want at the end of the day. RNC Research Democrat Rep. Delia Ramirez, in an unhinged rage, smears the Trump administration as fascist and vows to abolish ICE if they gain power. We must bring justice to every fascist in the administration. ICE will be abolished. DHS will be dismantled. Which, yeah, I truly believe that that's going to be on their agenda, and they probably will see that through if or when the Democrats retain or regain control of the House and the Senate. See what she has to say.
We must have accountability, and we must bring justice to every fascist in the administration, and that includes Kristi Noem, that includes Stephen Miller, and that includes Tom Homan. ICE will be abolished. DHS will be dismantled, and together we will get it done.
And you still don't think that the Democrats plan on reopening the floodgates at the southern border? They're going to completely demolish the entire border wall. They're going to dismantle DHS, which means we're going to be just left wide open. The entire third world is just going to flood in. We're going to wind up, a 2 billion person population by the year 2035. We're all going to own nothing, and we'll be happy. Or else. Okay, so Robin Kelly, food prices are up, electricity bills are up, healthcare costs are exploding, communities are terrorized by ICE. This is President Trump's America, broken promises, higher costs, and struggling families, while Republicans protect billionaires. The American people deserve better. And that's just another copy-paste from one Democrat to another. They're all just basically saying the same thing. It only got like 22 likes, but it came across the feed, and I was just like, didn't I just read this like 5 minutes ago when I was looking for material to share on tonight's episode? But no, it was a different Democrat. They're just all basically saying the same thing. Just not really any individual thought, just more collectivism for you. Michael Whatley, when he was North Carolina Governor, Roy Cooper released repeat offender DeCarlos Brown Jr., who went on to brutally murder Irania Zarutska aboard the Charlotte Light Rail this past summer. Cooper said the inmates he released weren't violent. That was a lie. When he tried to cover it up, an innocent woman is dead and her blood is on his hands. Instead of taking responsibility, Cooper is still lying and scrambling to hide the truth. And they have an article to follow up on that on Fox News. Charlotte Rail murder, a suspect linked to inmate release approved under ex-Democrat governor, the GOP alleges. Republican officials say records link DeCarlos Brown Jr. to a 2021 settlement that freed 3,500 inmates as Cooper runs for Senate. As former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper runs for the U.S. Senate, the killing of a young woman on a Charlotte light rail train has triggered renewed scrutiny of a prison release deal approved under his administration and whether the accused killer was among those freed. Republican officials are raising urgent questions, asking whether records show DeCarlos Brown Jr., the parolee and charged in the fatal stabbing of 23-year-old Irania Zarutska was tied to a 2021 COVID-era settlement that authorized the early release or transition of 3,500 incarcerated individuals. Prosecutors say Zarutska was stabbed to death aboard a Charlotte light rail train by Brown, a repeat offender with an extensive criminal history who was under state supervision at the time of the attack. The case has drawn heightened attention after records reviewed by Fox provided by Republican officials appeared to link Brown to the 2021 settlement, which was negotiated between Cooper's administration and civil rights groups amid concerns over COVID-19 conditions in state prisons. So we don't care how violent they are. We don't care what they've done in the past. We don't care what they're going to do if you release them. We just feel bad for them because, COVID. It's because COVID, man. The records reference offender identification numbers tied to the NAACP versus Cooper settlement and include the February 15, 2021 eligibility cutoff date, a key benchmark outlined in the agreement for determining which inmates qualified for early release or transition. One of the offender identification numbers listed corresponds to Brown, according to the records reviewed. Well, it sounds like there's no question about it. He was one of the 3,500. State officials have not publicly confirmed whether Brown was ultimately released or transitioned under the settlement, and no public list of the 3,500 inmates affected by the agreement has ever been released. After publication inquiries, corrections officials provided additional details about Brown's custody and supervision history, saying his release from prison was unrelated to the COVID litigation or settlement. And according to the Department of Adult Correction, Brown was released from custody on September 20th of 2020 after completing his mandatory minimum sentence and began a 12-month period of post-release supervision as required by law. While on post-release supervision, Brown was arrested on February 6th of 2021, which subjected him to possible revocation. A preliminary revocation hearing was held on February 15th of 21, at which point a hearing officer elected to reinstate Brown's post-release supervision. Corrections officials said the COVID settlement was not signed until February 25th of 21, 10 days after that hearing. However, because the settlement allowed the state to count eligible offenders retroactively, Brown was included on a settlement-related list, even though neither of his release from custody nor the revocation decision was affected by the litigation. Officials said Brown completed his sentence on September 20th of 21, at which point the state's authority to incarcerate or supervise him ended. Cooper's campaign disputed the allegations and said Brown was not released as part of the settlement while defending Cooper's record on public safety. This is a lie, a Cooper campaign spokeswoman told Fox. DeCarlos Brown was not released from prison as a result of the court-ordered settlement, but in fact served his full sentence and was not released early. Okay. I guess maybe I'm pretty sure they did say above that he completed the mandatory minimum, which really isn't a full sentence. It's just the minimum. But apparently she's pushing back even against maybe that statement. So Roy Cooper is the only candidate who spent his career prosecuting violent criminals and keeping thousands of them behind bars as Attorney General and signing tough on-crime laws and stricter pre-trial release bail policy as governor. All right. And I do have another follow-up to this from Nick Puglia. Breaking: Charlotte rail murder suspect linked to inmate release approved under then Governor Roy Cooper. Charlotte rail murder suspect linked to inmate release approved under ex-Dem Governor. GOP alleges the Charlotte rail murder suspect was released during a mass inmate release under a former Democratic governor. So it doesn't sound like it's like 100% proven, but it seems quite likely that that's what ended up happening. All right, HHS, 60% of S-trafficking victims are recruited online. 1/3 of 9 through 17-year-olds report having an online S interaction. ACF Adams advises parents on how to protect children from online S abuse. Ensure that the same safeguards you use for their physical security in person, you're also using online. And let's see, should I do the video first? Well, it's only 25 seconds. Let's just do this one first.
Child safety experts say parents need to be aware and engage with their child's online activity.
Having open communications with your kids, looking for patterns if they seem to be concealing devices and things like that. Just having open dialogue to prevent them from falling victim, and ensuring that the same safeguards you use for their physical security in person, you're also using online.
Yeah, and also let your kids know that no matter what it might be, you can always talk to me, talk to the parents, no matter what it is. Yeah, you just got to make that extremely apparent to your kids that they shouldn't be hiding anything from you. All right, HHS Director of Office on Trafficking in Persons, Catherine Chon, explains that many children believe they are connecting with a peer online, but often these encounters are with a predator looking to prey on their vulnerability.
Experts say
CNN.
that as technology rapidly evolves, that industry is widening, with more children being exploited online.
They may be thinking that they're connecting with a peer online, but it's actually someone who's a predator trying to prey on their vulnerability.
Research conducted for Thorn, a nonprofit that combats childhood sexual abuse, found that roughly a third of the 9 to 17-year-olds surveyed reported having an online sexual interaction.
Yeah, and that's horrifying. And social media networks like Facebook, they've supposed to have been clamping down on all of this over, I don't know, probably the last 15 plus years. Even going back to the 90s when there really wasn't any federal laws in place that protected children, which eventually I think they finally passed some laws way back then. And even still to this day, it's still a freaking third. It's still this insane number. Director Chon tells CNN that the rise in online child exploitation cases can be attributed to new online sites and apps, some of which allows users to make child pee deepfakes. Director Chon, there are 24 million unique visitors to these Nudify app downloading sites. The image of them could be used to coerce them for any number of reasons.
Catherine Chon has been working in the field of human trafficking for over 20 years for HHS and says she has seen the steady rise in these cases due to new online sites and apps. Certain apps allow users to upload a picture of a child and make them
anonymous
look nude.
apps don't help either.
24 million unique visitors to these Nudify app downloading sites. The image of them could be used to coerce them for any number of reasons, financial or otherwise.
Yeah, and I don't even know what the hell they're talking about with Nudify. I'm not familiar with that. That's definitely not in my wheelhouse. So extreme networks are grooming children to self-harm using child pee deepfakes. Director Chon details some examples that children, often young girls, have been exploited into. They may be told to drink water out of their toilet bowl, to harm their pet, to carve names on themselves, to carve other types of inscriptions on their bodies, to potentially harm others in the household. Bottom line, parents must be engaged with their child's online activity. So yeah, I've heard something similar to this before in the past, that children may speak to somebody and they'll essentially hold them for some kind of, I don't know, like ransom may not be the right way to put it, but they will convince the minor to send them something that would be arguably damning for them, and then they'll use what they sent them against them, and then they'll tell them to do these despicable things like carve names on them, or otherwise I will share this with your parents, or I'll tell your school or your best friends, and they get them to do all this horrendous stuff.
Officials like Chon are also warning against the growing trend of sadistic online exploitation involving perpetrators getting a child to cause harm to themselves or others. Chon says several people have been successfully prosecuted for these crimes, but the issue is ongoing, with members sharing manuals on how to groom, extort, and torture victims, typically young girls, online. These extremist networks are known as 764.
They may be told to.
Yep, Director Cash Patel's been talking about them. The FBI's been cracking down on them all year, over the last year.
To harm their pet, to carve names on themselves, to carve other types of inscriptions on their bodies, to potentially harm others in the household.
Child safety experts say parents need to be aware and engage with their child's online activity.
It's absolutely horrible, man. There is pure evil out there, man. There's really no limit to how evil somebody can really be. It's unbelievable. Okay. FBI, case update from FBI Miami. Florida laboratory owner pleads guilty to $52 million Medicare fraud scheme involving genetic tests. Sean Alterman, 38, owned and operated 2 laboratories that billed approximately $52 million to Medicare for false and fraudulent claims. Alterman made roughly $5.5 million from the scheme, much of which he received through shell companies. As part of his plea agreement, Alterman agreed to forfeit his Lake Worth, Florida estate and a 2022 Rolls-Royce Ghost purchased with money traceable to the scheme. You can read more about that on justice.gov, which I will have linked. So here's an image of his estate, his big fancy mansion in Florida, and also his really nice Rolls-Royce Ghost that he used with your stolen taxpayer money that he stole from us. So at least they got him. DEA HQ, DEA Operation Meltdown, shuts down hundreds of illegal online pharmacies. And the Drug Enforcement Administration, this case demonstrates how foreign-based traffickers exploit our healthcare system. They hide behind the internet and use people inside the U.S. to move dangerous drugs under the guise of legitimate commerce. Illegal online pharmacies put poison in American communities. They sell counterfeit and unapproved pills and do not care who gets hurt or who dies. Actions like this save lives. They protect the American people. If you run these sites, supply them, move for the money, ship the product, or help them operate, we will find you. We will dismantle your operations, and we will hold you fully accountable under U.S. law. That is the DEA Administrator, Terrence C. Cole. And just like the last post, they also have a link for that also. Looks like their press release. Let's see. Yeah, so it is a bit lengthy. Let's see what these bullet points are. As online pharmacies increase in popularity, patients are encouraged to remain vigilant when purchasing medication online. It can be difficult to identify an illegal online pharmacy, so here's some possible red flags that may indicate an online pharmacy is not legitimate. If they sell prescription drugs without requiring a valid prescription from a healthcare provider, I mean, that should go without saying. That's an obvious one. Offers much cheaper prices than what is typically seen. List prices in a foreign currency. Does not contain proof of a valid pharmacy state license or DEA registration. If the medicine arrives in broken or damaged packaging or in a foreign language, the medicine does not have an expiration date or is expired, or the medicine looks different from what you have received in the past from your trusted pharmacist. All good tips. I mean, most of them are just basic common sense, but still, I mean, there's a couple good points there. From the Department of State, quote, "My hope is that we are gathered here today as the first but important step to bring together our collective talent for innovation where our advantage over rivals has only grown and to apply it to bringing back manufacturing and reopening mines here in the United States, but also in the partner nations represented here today." And this, I believe, is from Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
So my hope is that we are gathered here today as the first but important step to rectifying this mistake, to bring together our collective talent for innovation where our advantage over rivals is only grown, and to apply it to bringing back manufacturing and reopening mines here in the United States, but also in all the partner nations represented here today.
Yep, certainly a good idea. Obviously, it's the same place where Vice President JD Vance made his speech earlier today. And I would imagine that Marco Rubio, so by clicking on the search and just typing in Marco Rubio, I would imagine he probably shared some more of his speech on his profile. It's got the gray badge, so you know it's an official government account. So just scrolling through, let's see, reposted. So there's reposting a lot of stuff from way back in January 13th. So maybe he's not very active on here. January 12th. Yeah, man, that's not as active as I thought he would have been, but that's okay. We can also check the Department of State and see if they may have shared anything with regard to his speech, because I didn't come across anything else other than that one. So here's one, a minute and a half. From the Department of State, Secretary Rubio, on why the Iranian regime cannot provide the people of Iran the quality of life they deserve. Actually, I've already bookmarked that. That's coming up here in a minute. Okay, so here we go. This one's about a minute. Is that with regard to Iran? Maybe not. Well, anyway, his speech, obviously, it covered a number of different things. I have this one that we're going to get to here in just a second, so let me just get back to the list. So maybe that was the only point that he was making with regard to the critical minerals. So let's see, where is it? All right, I thought for a minute I opened that in another tab, but nope, didn't. No big deal. Department of State, Part 1, Secretary Rubio on Iran. We don't view meetings as a concession. We don't view meetings as even legitimization. At the end of the day, the United States is prepared to engage and has always been prepared to engage with Iran.
Let me first say just on the logistics. At the end, let me back up and say from a big picture perspective, I think it's pretty clear right now, President Trump is willing to talk to and meet with and engage with anyone in the world. I mean, that we don't view meetings as a concession. We don't view meetings as even legitimization. It is our willingness to sit and listen and talk to anyone, any adversary, any ally, obviously, but anyone around the world. And so the president's always been open to that. He showed that in the first administration, and he's showing it again now. And so I think if there's an opportunity to engage directly with counterparts in the Iranian regime, the United States would be open to that, and that's what we're open to. We thought we had an established forum that had been agreed to. in Turkey. It was put together by a number of partners who wanted to attend and be a part of it. I saw conflicting reports yesterday from the Iranian side saying that they had not agreed to that. So that's still being worked through. At the end of the day, the United States is prepared to engage and has always been prepared to engage with Iran.
Well, hopefully they open up that line of communication. They have a part 2 here, so we'll watch the part 2.
As far as the topic of those discussions and what the agenda needs to be, look, I think in order for talks to actually lead to something meaningful, they will have to include certain things. And that includes the range of their ballistic missiles. That includes their sponsorship of terrorist organizations across the region. That includes the nuclear program, and that includes the treatment of their own people. As far as
come on, guys, only 19 seconds. You could have combined those two together. It still would have been less than a minute and a half. Okay, so we have another one. Secretary Rubio on why the Iranian regime cannot provide the people of Iran the quality of life they deserve.
The fundamental problem Iran faces and the regime faces right now is that what people are on the streets complaining about, this regime cannot address. They cannot address it because it's economic. Those problems remain. And one of the reasons why the Iranian regime cannot provide the people of Iran the quality of life that they deserve is because they're spending all their money, they're spending all their resources of what is a rich country sponsoring terrorism, sponsoring all these proxy groups around the world, exporting, as they call it, their revolution. But I remind everybody what I've been saying through my entire career in public service. I said it in my hearing when I was asking for confirmation through the Senate. The Iranian people and the Iranian regime are very unalike. In essence, what the Iranian people want, this is a culture with a deep history. These are people that are the leadership of Iran at the clerical level does not reflect the people of Iran. I know of no other country where there's a bigger difference between the people that lead the country and the people who live there. And so our hope resides in that. As far as the president's views on the way protesters were treated, he was very clear about it. And as you saw, part of what the president said publicly prevented mass executions that were being planned and we're on the precipice of. And obviously beyond that,
by the hundreds,
president retains
like
a number
800
of options to how he responds to that and future events. But as far as the talks are concerned, I think the Iranians had agreed to a certain format. For whatever reason, it's changed in their system or what have you. We'll see if we can get back to the right place. But the United States is prepared to meet with them.
Yeah, let's hope so. Although I can't exactly blame them for not wanting to talk to us, at least not for a little while. I'm sure they're still a little salty over what happened last summer. All right, so anyway, Operation Midnight Hammer. Dylan Johnson, Secretary Rubio on the Iran talks. They will have to include certain things, and that includes the range of their ballistic missiles, their sponsorship of terrorist organizations across the region, the nuclear program, and the treatment of their own people.
As far as the topic of those discussions and what the agenda needs to be, look, I think in order for talks to actually lead to something meaningful, they will have to include certain things. And that includes the range of their ballistic missiles. That includes their sponsorship of terrorist organizations across the region. That includes the nuclear program, and that includes the treatment of their own people.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all pretty fair points. All right, House Foreign Affairs Committee majority. President Trump destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities, removed Nicolas Maduro, brought hostages from Gaza, got NATO members to pay their dues, withdrew from unnecessary global bodies, and cut off Europe and India from Russian oil. America keeps winning under his leadership. And of course, Democrats won't give him a single inch. Those are all huge winning points. Big time. Bigly. House Foreign Affairs Committee majority again. Rep. Maria Salazar. For decades, tyrannical regimes in Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba have denied faith-based communities to freely exercise their religion. Today, the message is clear. There's a new sheriff in town, and their reign of oppression is coming to an end.
As you said, religious liberty is under attack around the world, and in the Western Hemisphere, there is a very clear example called Nicaragua. I know Nicaragua very well as a news correspondent working for Univision. I lived there, and I saw firsthand how the Nicaraguans, along with the Chileans, are the most Catholic people in the Western Hemisphere. I remember during one of the elections when Cardenal Obando y Bravo, who was like a rock star for the Nicaraguans, was able to indicate or to guide the people to how to vote when the Sandinistas were trying to steal the elections once again. But unfortunately, the Sandinistas, Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo, are back in power, and they are trying to substitute God for their regime. And this is what, and this is not an opinion, this is the empirical evidence. 260 religious figures have been expelled from just preaching or praying in public. 1,000 Catholic
That's
churches
funny. Sounds like what the
have
Democrats
been
want,
attacked,
probably.
according to the Vatican. In 2024, evangelical pastors belonging to this group called the Mountain Gateway Ministries were arrested on fake charges and were sentenced to decades in prison just for bringing the gospel. That is what Ortega and Murillo do to their people and to those who are close to God. In 2025, last year, Ortega threw out the Clarisas nuns, forced them to flee to their convents, and with almost nothing. And not only that, the nuns from Teresa de Calcutta or from Mother Teresa, and I visit them, I know them in El Mercado Oriental, they had to flee, they had to go because Ortega would not allow them to continue practicing and servicing those people who lived in that market called El Mercado Oriental. On top of that, the Holy Week and Lent, those big processions that I covered as a news reporter, were completely banned, and they have been gone for the last 3 years. And on top of that, more than 6,000 faith-based NGOs have been shut down. The good news is that two things, that the Nicaraguan people remain to be a very solid group of evangelicals and Catholic and people that are of great faith. The Nicaraguan people, as I said, along with the Chileans. That's the first situation that the Murillo and the Ortega Murillo are facing. And the second one is Donald Trump. Everyone saw what happened in Venezuela. Everyone is understanding what's happening in Cuba right now, that apparently we're talking to the regime. These are three tyrannies: Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba in Western Hemisphere that have not allowed for decades for the faith-based community to flourish and to preach in whichever way they want to. So the message is very clear from this dais and from this hearing to Ortega and Murillo, and I will send them a message in Spanish so they can understand it very well, that their game is over. That I think it's time for them to understand that things are changing in the Western Hemisphere, and the first thing that they should do is not touch those faith-based communities, the Catholics, the evangelicals, or any other, the NGOs that are helping them. That is very clear that they have to change their tune, otherwise the United States is going to take care of that, because there is a new sheriff in town. And not only for political reasons, but for religious reasons, for human rights reasons. The being free to preach and to go to church and do whatever thing you want to on Sundays is not a prerogative that the government gives you. It's something that the Lord has given you for you to go and pray as long as you want to without any type of interference. So that's a very clear message, which I am going to now relay to specifically Rosario Murillo, who is the devil herself, and who that's why she is guiding her husband not to allow this type of activities to happen on the Nicaraguan territory. La realidad es que este es un mensaje para Rosario Murillo y Daniel Ortega, los que están dirigiendo Nicaragua en este momento. Sus días están contados y el juego se acabó. Así que específicamente la religión, ahí está el ejemplo, Chairman, for allowing us to send this message.
I don't understand Spanish.
Specifically to the
I think
Nicaraguan
she's just
people
repeating what
that
she
have
already
been
said.
wanting for the United States to pay attention to them and to give them back those religious freedom, civil rights, human rights that they had for so many years.
Wow, man, that was incredible. I'm glad I included that. That was it was a bit on the long side, but still very important. Not just with Cuba and Venezuela, but also Nicaragua. Drop us some truth bombs that I wasn't aware of, that they were that oppressive with religion in Nicaragua. I had no idea. But anyway, I'll repost that just in case if you want to hear what she said in Spanish, if you happen to understand Spanish. Maybe she made some points that she didn't make in English, although I'm sure she pretty much got her point across with that. So, yeah, man, there's a new sheriff in town, at least for the short term, at least for the next few years. And that's the only unfortunate thing with our system of governance, that, the pendulum swings from one side to the other every so often. So, as long as as powerful as President Trump might be and as influential and beneficial Trump's presidency might be, it's unfortunately just temporary. It's always temporary from one administration to the next. All right, U.S. Foreign Assist. Today, the State Department announced $200 million of humanitarian assistance to the Sudan Humanitarian Fund. This contribution is part of the landmark $2 billion pledge to UNOCHA, UN Humanitarian, made in December and will help address the catastrophic humanitarian crisis affecting millions of people in Sudan. As long as it's managed properly and it doesn't fall into the wrong hands, I don't think that there really should be a whole hell of a lot of pushback, even though $200 million, that's a lot of money for that region. I think in Sudan, the average income for an individual working age is only about $400 a year. I'm assuming that's full-time, working all year round. That's about how much USD equivalent that they earn per year. So it's definitely the poorest country in the world. And from Christopher Landau, excellent meeting today with New Zealand Secretary of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Bede Corey, for our strategic dialogue. We look forward to working with our Kiwi partners on expanding cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, increasing mutually beneficial trade and investment, and collaborating on issues like critical minerals and emerging technologies. We hope to continue the long-standing cooperation between our countries on Antarctic research and appreciate New Zealand's long history of supporting the United States Antarctic program. So, sounds like quite an effective meeting that they had today over in New Zealand. We don't really see New Zealand in the media, or at least on the feed. I think that might be the first time that I've come across anything having to do with New Zealand. So anyway, U.S. Army from earlier today. The most dangerous adversary is the one you never see coming. Ghillie suit training is an exercise in extreme patience and craftsmanship. Our soldiers train to master their environment using ghillie suits to gain the ultimate advantage. This looks brutal, man.
I'm trying to go harder than I ever win.
Wow, man, definitely looks treacherous, very exerting. The water looked freezing cold, very difficult. I'm sure that's only reserved for the strongest of the strong. And I like showing the military content. It's difficult because I don't know if that's a copyrighted song or not. I'm not familiar with that tune. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It would sure be nice if the military, just all the branches, if they would just start, I don't know, taking some time to maybe research some non-copyrighted material. Royalty-free music. There's plenty of it on YouTube. All you have to do is just credit the person. All right, so anyway, let's move on to First Lady Melania Trump. From earlier, into law a new bill, Melania Trump Foster Youth to Independence Initiative. First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, has secured $30 million to support foster youth aging out of the system, delivering essential resources that advance independence, stability, and well-being.
I'm especially pleased to know that there is $30 million set aside for the First Lady's initiative on foster youth. Her Foster Care to Independence program is going to benefit greatly by the bill that we're just about to sign right here at the White House. And I wouldn't be talking about it had it not been the passion and the drive and the influence of the First Lady.
Fantastic. I think that's a wonderful idea. Certainly a good idea. Because, yeah, there's too many children that are completely forgotten about in our foster care system. All right. And Secretary Brooke Rollins, this administration will not allow fraudsters to steal from programs designed for the most vulnerable Americans. We're taking strong action at USDA to crack down on waste, fraud, and abuse in the SNAP benefits program. Just this week, 4 defendants, including 2 Venezuelan nationals, were charged with using 115 stolen identities to fraudulently obtain over $1 million in food stamps and pandemic unemployment benefits. This kind of exploitation ends now. If you see SNAP fraud, you can report it right here. And right there you shall report it, especially if you come across it. And dishonesty. 4 people, including 2 Venezuelan citizens, were charged with allegedly using more than 100 stolen identities to commit food stamp fraud and collect pandemic unemployment benefits across 5 states. Authorities say some of the fraudulent funds were used to supply Massachusetts restaurant with profits that were wired to locations including Venezuela and the Dominican Republic. and that's on Fox News. And yeah, I was gonna say, I thought they were, you would think they would post the link to their own article. 4 defendants, including 2 Venezuelans, allegedly used 115 stolen identities in food stamp fraud. Let's see. Federal prosecutors said the suspects stole the identities from people all across the country, including 6 children, to obtain supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and pandemic unemployment benefits from Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Washington, and Nevada. The defendants were identified as Joel Vicioso Fernandez, age 42, and Raul Fernandez Vicioso, 37, both of Fitchburg, Massachusetts. Also, Roman Vaquiz Fernandez, 32, and Coralba Albarracin Siniva, age 24, both Venezuelan nationals living in Lyons, Massachusetts. And it looks like there's an image of them and some of the cards that they recovered. All 4 purchased the stolen identities of 24 households and SNAP applications. The applicants submitted in the names of over 100 people were listed as living in 2 single-family apartments in Providence, Rhode Island. Raul Fernandez Vicioso, a Dominican citizen, and Joel Vicioso Fernandez allegedly used their own personal information to create fraudulent SNAP benefit accounts that were found commingled among the victim identities in the applications. The suspects also provided images of counterfeit passports and passport cards with metadata that indicated the images were taken inside or within the immediate vicinity of El Primo Restaurant, a restaurant operated by Raul Fernandez Vicioso in Leominster, Massachusetts, federal prosecutors said. So what, they're allowing you to use SNAP benefits to go to restaurants now? I mean, what the hell, man? The SNAP benefits were used to make bulk purchases of food items, including multiple pound packages of chicken, beef, and pork at various local wholesalers and food markets to stock El Primo Restaurant, authorities said. Well, look, either people are being allowed to use the SNAP benefits in restaurants, or these local wholesalers are accepting SNAP benefits, or I guess they converted it to cash in some way or another, maybe. With their supplies obtained for free through fraudulent SNAP benefits, they prepared and then sold menu items at El Primo Restaurant at a complete profit, later wiring the fraud proceeds, among other places, to individuals living in Venezuela and the Dominican Republic. In addition, between April 2020 and December 21, the 4 defendants allegedly collected $700,000 by submitting fraudulent pandemic unemployment assistance applications in Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Nevada. At least 29 different identities were allegedly used in PUA applications, all of which listed the address for El Primo Restaurant as the residential address. Around $276,021 in fraudulent PUA benefits were deposited into bank accounts held in the names of the El Primo Restaurant, Raul Fernandez Vicioso, Joel Vicioso Fernandez, and other co-conspirators, prosecutors said. And it goes on a little bit from there. More than 100 identities, SNAP-related mailings were recovered. And looks like they're being charged with conspiracy to use, transfer, acquire, and possess SNAP benefits. All right. And rolling on to the next from the Department of Energy. President Trump's energy agenda is simple. Drive down the price of energy and grow the economy to lower costs for consumers and raise wages for workers.
The president, of course, has been doing many things at the same time, but his agenda at home has been simple, which is to drive down prices. And in many areas of energy, we've already made tremendous progress. And grow job opportunities, get more things built in America, because guess what?
Of course, the Democrats say the opposite, because he's stripping away renewable energy,
particularly for blue-collar workers.
That means everything's magically getting more expensive.
And raise wages. I think America's on board with that agenda.
They certainly are. I saw your speech at Davos. We teed it up before you joined us live, where you were very aggressive about saying doubling oil production in America. You want to, fuel these AI data centers to make sure that we beat China in the race in artificial intelligence. The elites at Davos don't really like that. They used to lecture us about climate change. Their agenda,
yeah, of course,
it seems, has
takes
been
a lot of energy
by you and the
to
president,
run AI.
hasn't it?
And boy, it was funny. We brought that same message to Davos in our 2 different styles. The president is a very effective communicator, but very little pushback. I think most of the European leaders and the European business leaders, they know they made a mistake and just wildly overhyping climate change, making energy more expensive, pushing industry out of Europe and over to Asia. It was just a crazy direction the world was in. We've called a spade a spade.
They just wanted to populate the earth. That's all they wanted to do.
I think most of the European nations know that they need to pivot. They need to go the direction of the United States. Bring down the cost of energy, grow your economy, lower costs. It's common sense.
It's common sense.
Amazing. It was out of fashion for a decade or two.
Yeah, they're a bunch of idiots over there, man. Freaking morons. It's not going to work. Okay, Judy Chu. Yesterday, Senator Adam Schiff and I led for 14 California members in a letter to major insurers demanding answers about the hoops they're forcing LA fire survivors to jump through for fair compensation. And Rep. Chu and Senator Schiff lead California delegation in calling on major insurance companies to ensure LA fire victims receive fair compensation. Look, I think that's a fair point. That's why I brought this up. Because, like, not every single little thing Democrats do is just horrendous and counterproductive and destructive. I mean, look, if the insurance companies are making them jump through a whole bunch of hoops just to try to get their claims paid out, then, yeah, I mean, it is kind of nice to have some politicians at least send them strongly worded letters to ensure that they stop dicking around and actually start paying out these claims. Now all they got to do is start writing letters to Mayor Karen Bass of LA and also Governor Newsom and tell them to start stripping away all that bullshit red tape that they've been set up, or that has been set up because nobody's getting their houses rebuilt in the Palisades. Apparently that's the number one reason, because they're not getting any approval from the state in order to rebuild their houses. So before the insurance can pay out, they probably have to get the approval to get their houses built first, because how are you going to know how much it's going to cost if they don't have all the approval paperwork all finished up? All right, so U.S. Department of Transportation, the 2026 FIFA World Cup is just months away, and Amtrak will show fans around the world how the department keeps America moving and building. And from Amtrak, we're excited to welcome travelers from across the nation and globe this summer for America's 250th anniversary celebrations and FIFA World Cup 2026. Customers should book now to secure seats ahead of one of the busiest travel periods in Amtrak history. It looks like they've got a link for, I'm assuming, to book your trip. Oh, no. Okay. So no, it's just an article that's elaborating on the big America 250, the series of celebrations happening this year. Also the FIFA World Cup. There's more than 100 FIFA World Cup soccer games happening across North America. So yeah, I mean, it seemed to make sense that some people, especially those who are not too keen on flying, they could take Amtrak to get from game to game. Although, I mean, I don't know how everyday people could afford that. I don't even know how much it costs to go to these games. I'm sure it's expensive. I could only imagine, but I've never watched a FIFA game because I don't watch sports. But anyway, I'm sure a lot of people will, though. And isn't that like one of the... It's the biggest sports event in the world, right? And that they only do it something like every 4 years. All right, Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, finishing up on this one. The NASA Webb and Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescopes are two extraordinary observatories. Once Roman launches, they will work in tandem to change our understanding of the universe. If you missed any of the other videos in this series or want to learn more about their future teamwork, you can check out this link, which I'll have down in the description. And I've got this video. Let's wrap up with this.
The James Webb and Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescopes are two missions with different but overlapping science goals. Both will help us understand the history of the universe and what other worlds exist in it now. They will bring us closer to answering fundamental questions like where do we come from and are we alone? Because both telescopes will operate at the same time, they can work together to discover far more about the cosmos than either could learn alone. When Roman makes an intriguing exoplanet discovery, Webb may be able to follow up soon after, helping scientists learn more. When Roman detects a transient event, like a supernova, somewhere in its broad coverage, Webb can focus in to take deeper measurements. Should Webb find an interesting quirk in a nearby galaxy it's studying, Roman can provide context with thousands of galaxies around it. Two of the greatest space telescopes ever built will work together, using each other's strengths to advance our knowledge of the universe.
Well, that sounds like a very good idea. And plus, we have a whole network of ground-based telescopes and a whole bunch of other telescopes, also space telescopes. The Chandra telescope, I think, is still running. Hubble Space Telescope, even though its uses has largely been replaced by Webb. But that is nice that they can actually do that, overlap, and use one to provide more focus on a region that the other has found. So that's always pretty cool to see. So anyway, that will do it for this episode. If you enjoyed the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll be back with another show tomorrow evening covering the swamp and everyone in it, the politicians, bureaucrats, and the agencies. I also post on X daily, so feel free to comment there too if you'd like. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your night, and God bless America.